So today we're here to discuss our results about the supply chain game. Um, we have to discuss several questions regarding the simulation. And the first one is about our strategy when in the production room. So how did we balance the efficiency and responsiveness in the production room? So Catalina, maybe you would start first to answer.
Yes, hello everyone. What I did when I was in the production room, I did a mix of strategies in which, in some cases, I gave more importance to responsibilities, and sometimes I gave more importance to efficiency. In the production room, I thought about general objectives and profits. I decided to go for an efficiency strategy with a mix of suppliers in which the setup cost was low. Then I never used the four suppliers. I mostly used two suppliers, the one for far away, mostly for volume on both models, and the closer suppliers for lower quantities, looking for most responsibilities. On lead time, I was thinking about lead time and efficiency, thinking about cost. In the last year, since I didn't get votes from the board of directors, I decided to use three suppliers, even though the setup costing for one of them was very high. I never thought about changing the order according to the actual demand. I didn't like handle that part very well, and I was thinking about efficiency and costing. So I never thought about changing the order since that situation will imply paying extra cost. So efficiency will be not reached. So I decided not to do it. So I give the word to Alfred so he can explain to us his strategy.
Thank you, Kata. Very, very interesting. Good morning, guys. Good morning, Professor. Thank you. So about the first question, okay, as a supply chain manager, my strategy was about to choose the right design attached to the average board decision in the forecasting, and basically build a responsive production with only two suppliers, one national, one international, to place the demand of the market in the period from May to December, of course. So basically, first I got to do like a lot of research there in the rooms to see what was going on and to understand really the dynamic of the game. So in the production room, I chose only two suppliers. One was responsive and the other one that was the efficient supplier. The first one had a lower lead time and a higher setup cost with a high capacity of both models. But on the other hand, the second one was more efficient because the setup cost was low and the capacity and lead time was high. So the purpose for me was to find a balance on the supply chain on both models at the same time that I was being careful in the inventory levels. So I was demanding under the capacity of both suppliers to have a good inventory on the coming months and not accumulate much at the end of the year, because those high quantities would make it not profitable. And with those actions, it was possible to create a cost and flexible supply chain for the company. It was more about a balance between profits, production, monthly, and a monthly impact. And basically, the first supplier was the one I was ordering more in order to not carry more inventory, and in order to be more responsive in the supply chain, as it was the responsive supplier above from the efficient one. So that's in general, what I did in the production room and what I did on the strategy. I'm going to pass the word to Thomas.
Yes. So, guys, my strategy was kind of the same as yours, but I took 3 suppliers as you took 2. So I actually had one that was a far supplier abroad, located abroad more for the efficiency, and the other one was 2 local suppliers that allowed me to be really responsive. So the one that was the farthest supplier, I actually ordered this product from him that I was certain to sell. So I had like a percentage of the forecast that I was pretty sure to sell. So I ordered from them, and as it would take 4 months to change the order, I never changed the order. The order. For the 2 other ones, it helped me to be really responsive, because why did I take 2? Because I remember there was a rule we could only change by 20%, if I remember well, the precedent order. So that's why I took 2 to be actually more responsive. And I also chose the option of there was a 2 million forecast tool every year that you could choose, and so have better forecasts. So that was really helpful for me. And yeah, it gave me the chance to see what is really gonna happen, and so be as responsive as possible. So that was my strategy.
Awesome, thank you, Thomas. So basically, I was, in terms of the production, I was very prudent. For example, for the first 2 years, I just chose one supplier. My mistake there was that I understood the dynamics of choosing the right supplier only in the 4th year. At the beginning, I started, okay, I don't have enough information in order to get the right supplier, so I'm gonna play it safe and just have one that is not costly, and the cheapest one was the far away one. Then in the 2nd year, I also played safe with the far away one, and I started realizing that the lead time and the time to get the production was taking longer, even though I programmed it from the beginning of the year. But when I had to do some changes in terms of, because I also, as Thomas said, I also paid maybe in the 3rd year for the marketing forecasting tool. And I started realizing some of the changes in the market. So when I wanted to make a change, the lead time was very large. So in that time, I said, okay, I not only need one that is the cheapest, but also the one that is more efficient. That is the one that, more responsiveness. So in the responsive one, I chose the most responsive one in the last year. So for the first 3 years, maybe for the first year, it was playing it safe. But for the maybe 2, 3, and 4th year, it was recommended to have maybe more than just one supplier, one efficient and one responsive. So I made that mistake, but I realized, unfortunately, at the last year.
Guys, I would like to point something out. I think it was very important for us to have a clear picture about responsibilities and efficiency, since we all talk about that. I think it's an important concept we learned from this class. And also, I would like to mention that we all thought about cost and benefit analysis. So I think those also were clue things we learned from this class. Maybe Nat can complete all these strategies right now, since she's the one who got the best score.
Great.
So my strategy was really simple. I always use the same suppliers and the same demand. So I don't know if it was luck or only like what professor said, what simple is the best. So I think that I need to have a global vision. So I choose two suppliers, one local and one international. Because if something happen inside or outside the country, I always have a supplier to produce what I request. So this was like my first strategy. About the suppliers, I chose the cheapest compared with the other options. So here I use like a responsiveness option because in I focus on the first year, like have the higher profit, and after 1 year that I know really careful the game, I can make change. But unfortunately, I make like a good result in the first year, so I keep with the same strategy. Um, However, in the game, when I need to change the production order, I only use one supplier to minimize costs because in the game say that if you change the production order, you need to pay. So this is another strategy that I choose to maintain the minimized costs. Also, I think about games the board of directors. So I I always believe in the responsibility to start getting the board of directors. So I approach through scalable fulfillment and maintain good communication to respond purposefully and with an appropriate time frame to consumer requests on change in the marketplace. Because in responsible and efficiency to have a balance, you need to always keep in mind the consumers. So at the third year, I try to have a balance between both. So I want to um, assuring that no resource were waste or not value add tasks like the annual member conference, which I believe that the result was not being really accurate and the forecast demand was not perfect because in the cell phone market we know like what happened with Samsung and Apple, like when they have a new product, everyone that has like the model the previous model, they want to buy the newest, but it's only for like I don't know the first month or the second month, and then the demand is going to be decreased. So for me, cell phones market is really difficult to have like a historical demand. This is why I always use the historical average demand.
So I think it's important to point there that first we have to see which is the product, because it's not the same to have an accurate forecasting for cell phones, which as Nati says, like the evolution, the changes in technology, some feature that today it's very, very catchy and very sort of the trend. Maybe in 6 months, 5 months, it's not the same. So forecasting this type of products, it's very difficult. And that was maybe one of the things that most of us didn't take into account. Even if we paid for a marketing outsourcing company that said, okay, in the future, this is going to happen, that is it worth it $2 million? Is it going to really impact my sort of the sales that I'm going to make, or is it going to hurt more my profit? So those are things that are very important to first of all have the product. Second, understanding the sort of the importance of the supply chain in terms of efficiency and responsiveness. The mixture of those, maybe at the beginning, in the first year, the strategy, and we all sort of agreed in the same thing. The first year we had no information, we were understanding the market, but we at the second year there should be some decisions made based on that first year. Part of the class and some of the like one of the most important things that I remember from the class and from the teacher was that we shouldn't assume things in the supply chain. Maybe keeping it simple, as Nati said, maybe understanding the whole process in terms of which is the supplier. Not always the cheapest option is the best, but not always their most responsive one is the best. So a mixture of those, depending on the sort of the time frame of the product or the life cycle of the product or the market, is going to be lead us to a more accurate decision in terms of forecast. So Thomas, can you introduce us to the second sort of discussion question?
Yeah. So we can move on now to the next topic. I would say that is more about the options. So I would like to know which were the factors you took into account when selecting the different options in your cell phones. So maybe Catalina, you can start again if you want.
Sure. Of course, for the design room, I mostly follow the advices of the experts. So I think it was a big mistake from my side, because I was confident for the first 3 years that they had like the right word on that. And then for the 4th year, I changed the strategy and I went for more risky or innovation pattern, and I some sort of thinking about responsibilities on these cases, feeding the customer necessities based on what the experts were saying. That was pretty much what I did when I was in the design room. I don't know, guys, if you have another strategy that you can share with us, maybe Alfred or Andrew.
That's great. Thank you, Kata. Yeah, I think very important. Some of the, and I also mentioning something that Andres said. Yeah, the first year for some of us, we're about to explore, we're about to get to know, to understand what was going on. And that happened to me. And from the conclusions that we got from that class, we don't have to choose a design with from a zero-based assumption or constraint. I mean, I kind of did an assumption in the first year, which was the worst year for me, and then I realized that I had to do a balance between profits, production, the monthly impact of the board decision, and taking into consideration the standard deviation of those statistics I had. Because the first year and also the second one, I did the second one, I did a good one, but I chose not a good option in the design room, and that got an impact to the whole supply chain and to the profits at the end of the second year. So I basically knew that the revenues per unit were extremely important to make this new line profitable, which was the impact per unit. And yes, I chose the wrong option in year 1, and the impacts were reflected the whole year. It changed the forecasting, it changed the production, and I ended up with less revenue. Also the production levels variation were very important, because the company needed to have more production available with the new option incorporated. If not, the inventory would suffer variations. And the monthly impact of those options was also important, because the consensus level that were well more accurate in the board, and then the decision in the forecasting room were less divided. So it was easier to choose one option there. And also, the design room definitely wouldn't have to be taken for granted, because I learned from the year 1 and year 2 that the impact was so huge. So basically, it was choose a balance: profits, production, inventory, monthly impact, and a standard deviation. Which I choose the one, and I only choose one. I didn't choose the combination of some design, because this balance that I was talking about wasn't positive for the company. So I only stayed with one feature in the design room, and I go on with that in the year 3 and year 4, which were very good years then. So I pass the word to Thomas, so you can tell us a little bit about yours.
Yeah. So for my strategy, it was maybe a bit different. So I took 2 parameters into account that were really important for me. The first one was to check which option or which combination of options is going to give me the high marginal profit as possible, the highest. And the second one was to have high estimated forecasts, because, for example, you could choose one option that gave you a forecast, so a number of cell phones, and then you added some other options that lowered the forecast, so you had less forecasts and your marginal profit was the same, or the variation was a bit lower. So I always try to keep the matrix into my mind, that I would remember that the number of products sold multiplied by the margin is going to give you actually your benefits. So if you get the highest number of products sold as possible, so the highest forecast, multiplied by the highest margin as possible, it would give you, in theory, it would give you the highest profits. So that's the way I worked. So in most of the cases, it was always with 1 or 2 options, no more, because also if you take many options, you have like a high volatility or high variations in the forecast, and I didn't want that, and I also didn't want to add unnecessary features. So that was really important for me. So that's basically how I selected my options. Maybe Andres, you can continue.
Absolutely. So in this case, again, for the first year, I was listening to the experts, to my colleagues, to the design experts in the company, and I trusted them a lot in the first year. So I read carefully what they said. Especially the ones that were like 5 years, that had 5 years in the company and had a lot of, in theory, a lot of experience. But in the second year, I started realizing that even though they had experience, as we discussed and Nati said at the beginning, this is a product that you can't forecast accurately, as accurately as you wish. The changes are very fast. So there was a mix between the most experienced people, like 2 guys, and one of them very grown-up man, and a lady that was also had a lot of years. So I said, okay, maybe they're old, they don't understand this in terms of technology and cell phones, and started also reading the youngsters. So what I did was, if one forecasted, I don't know, 70, and the old forecasted 70 and the young one forecasted 30, I did it in the middle. So okay, let's forecast 45. So taking into account the opinion and the forecast of the young, but also the opinion and the forecast of the experience. At the end, it also sort of didn't help me a lot, but what I did was play it safe. Okay, I won't go for 100 units, even though the forecast is that. I would play it safe. And at the end of the board of directors, they told me, why are you like sort of you're not risking, you are very shy, I don't give you my vote because you should risk a little bit more. And I decided to play it safe for the 4 years. In terms of the features, maybe because that same strategy of playing safe, I always included one feature in the design per model. I never added 2 or 3 or 4 based on the increasing of the costs. But I also made a mistake, and it was, I didn't do what Thomas did. Thomas analyzed the costs and the possible impact of that per unit profit. I didn't analyze the cost. I just said, okay, I put one feature and the forecast is good, so I go with it. I never saw the costs. So that was good for me in terms of playing it safe in the forecast and not having a lot of inventory or not having a backlog. I always had a decent number. But in terms of the profit, the growth was very little, was very I put a break on that. So I think it was a mistake because the sales were good and I could get more money based on the forecasting I did. So I had a good forecasting. I think it was a good strategy to pick just one feature per cell phone. But at the end, the profit was not as good as I wished because I was very shy.
I really like what Thomas and Andres and Luis made because I didn't believe or thinking about that when I was playing, because my strategy was really different from you guys. I think in the company, like in the internal company, I was new in the board of the directors, so I want to gain us. And of course, this was really important because this was part of win the game. So for me, the comments that they had for the devices was the most important. I want that each of them feel proud, or that his work, like innovation or whatever part that they work in the company, they feel with me like being a team. Because in the supply chain we saw that it's really important that all the chain is connected and the communication is the base for make a good negotiation or business. So I really don't focus on cost. Of course, I think the same as Andres and Luis, that if you choose 2 or 3 device or options, the cost is going to be higher. And if the demand is going to be low, you're never going to have a profit. So I always choose only one upgrade. And for me, it was really important because each year, like in the second or third or fourth, they always have a new idea. And for me, that was like something important because in the market of the cell phones, you need to attract with something surprise or new to the customer. So that's new ideas maybe the competitors always have, or so they want to implement it. So I prefer the newest because for me, this is how the market of the cell phones increase. Like who has the best camera, and I don't remember the other one, but for me the camera was the best because you can replace your Sony or your Canon only, like the professional photographs use that one. The other one is they think that with your cell phone you can do it both. So I always think in the customer because it's like the most important factor to have a balance between your negotiation and the outside.
It's very interesting to see how like the perception of each of us as supply chain managers and the decisions we make are based on what? Are we basing our decisions on the design team? are we basing our decisions on the, I don't know, what the marketing analysis company says? Or do we have to take into account the board of directors who know the company, who know a little bit more than the design team? And actually at the end, as Nati said, their opinion and their analysis is the one that is going to give us like the votes and also our long-term being in the company. If not, we're going to be fired. So we can have a lot of profit, but at the end, if we didn't follow their decisions in terms of innovation, in terms of take into account the costs, take into account the efficiency of the efficiency and responsiveness of the suppliers, all those stuffs was not because only for getting some votes. It was also to impact positively our profits in terms of the decisions we made.
I think what's interesting, yeah, that what you're saying, Andres. And on the other hand, I think there are also the supply chain manager needs to take like some decisions, even based on the numbers that they have, even more sometimes more even the qualitative analysis that the board is doing. Because yeah, I was talking about with the professor. He told me that yeah, sometimes the students start by reading carefully the analysis of the board in the first 1 or 2 years. Then third and fourth year is like, okay, let's pass this because I need to see the numbers as how it's going, the impact in the other years. So I think yes, it's very, very important. But I think also that the supply chain manager needs to be so careful in the numbers, because at the end he or she is going to take the decision, and then you see reflected in the vote. Even if you didn't do this, I'm gonna give you my vote because the performance was this, and that. So I think that was very interesting and also to take into consideration.
So Nati and Kata, do you think it's what's more in terms of like the importance? Do you think it's more important to get a good profit or to please the board of directors in terms of their needs? What do you think it's like the most important objective?
For example, for me, I think that when you are new in a company, it doesn't matter if you are the supply manager, you have orders, and you need to that people feel proud of what you do it. And if you start doing like say something really different of what they doing, the impact is going to be critical and really higher. So at the beginning, you need to start like using new methods or whatever of you want to use to innovate. But of course, the rules and the policies that your company has is needs to be part of you and of your decisions.
And I also think that it's very important to have a mix of things. I think all in life includes even in work decisions, there should be a mix, a balance between what the profit and profit is very important to continue running the company. So I think it's very important to have profit. And for the board of directors or managers or the persons who hire us and have the power to do many things, we need to find a way to tell them what things are important. You can balance that in a way that you can convince them that profit is important or at some point profit is not important, and then get the votes and their acknowledge about what you are doing. It's a process, as Nat says. At the beginning, you have to be very conservative and know the rules and follow the rules. And then you start meeting people, understanding the way the company is structured, and then make decisions that are good for your company, good for your work, and good for the board of directors. It's a balance, it's a mix of everything.
Okay, so in order to get to our final conclusion to see which were the best strategies, I think there's something very important that we all agree on is that, as the teacher says in I think most of the classes, the importance of the company strategy, of the company objectives. If we have that clear, we can make the decisions accurately, depending if it's a matter of having a good profit or if it's a matter of meeting the values of the company. As long as we have clear the objectives and the company strategy, we can fit that supply chain strategy to go with the company strategy.
Yeah.
So Nati, any additional comment or?
Yeah,
Okay,
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Awesome. So
Yes.
Nati, can you help us in order to gather the conclusions and see which was the best strategy?
I don't think, of course, the profits and the results shows that my strategy was the best. But when I lead you guys, I think that if I have your ideas, I can do better and have more profit. So for me, it's a mix of what Kata says, of all of us. So this is why the supply chain is not only one person. Each person has a lot of responsiveness and roles and goals, but we are a team. And this is how we can conclude that supply chain is a communication with a lot of facilities and a lot of people that can show you that you can do like the best of the best together.
I think that's the best conclusion, and the exercise should lead us to this, to understand that supply chain has a lot of elements, has a lot of people involved, has a lot of decisions involved, and there's no one perfect and main strategy. There are a lot of strategies that mixed in the right way, it's like a recipe. It tastes good or it tastes bad, depending on how much amount of each thing you add. Communication, it's very important. Understanding the capabilities of each of the stages of the supply chain. So understand the capabilities of our suppliers. As we saw in the exercise, some of the suppliers were very good in terms of costs or in terms of responsiveness, but at the end, the amount that they could produce was only 60 or only 50. So we had to mix between those capabilities of each of them. And I think that the conclusion is Natalie's saying is the right one. There's not a perfect recipe for this. It's a mix of a lot of communication, right decisions, right information, and having clear the corporate strategy. So thank you so much. And thank you, teacher, for everything. We actually learned a lot. And thank God it was with the money of Harvard game and not with our company's money.
Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.
you.
Thank you, guys. You have a good one. Take care.